Fine, now that we have learned how to, or rather we have understood completing the square method, it is important to know how to use it. And this one is explained in example 4. But before we go to example 4, it is important to read the pink pages on page 22, which says a quadratic expressions in the form P, open bracket, x plus q, close bracket, and then squared, plus r, where p, q, and r are real constants, is in completed square form. This is in, it is in completed. It is in completed square form. Completed square form, because of course you can see there is a one bracket which is a complete square. Let's look at example 4, part A, which says complete the square for the expressions x squared plus 8x. And of course, the very general method or approach of this one, we have had in the previous video that when we have x squared plus bx, this is the same as x plus b over 2 squared minus b over 2 squared. We have understood this in the previous video. So our a is 1 and our b is 8. This is basically x plus 8 over 2 squared minus 8 over 2 squared. If you summarize this, you're going to have x plus 4 squared minus 4 squared. And at the end of the day, this one gives you x plus 4 squared minus 16. That one is now in a completed square method. You can see it's in this form where p is 1, q is 4, and r is minus 16. Let us talk about part B, where we have part B, x squared minus 3x. Again, this one can be written as a complete square, whereby we have x minus 3 over 2 squared minus 3 over 2 squared. So if because basically our b is negative 3, that is why we have carried it on to the formula. And at the end of the day, you are going to have this is equals to x minus 3 over 2 squared minus, now negative 3 squared is 9 over 4. So that becomes the final submission as far as that one is concerned. Please note, negative 3 squared is positive, so it maintains the negativity because negative 3 squared is itself positive, and that is it. What about part C? Part C, we have 2x squared minus 12x. You realize that the coefficient of x squared is not 1 here. And for us to perfectly complete our square, we have to make the coefficient of x squared 1. So in this case, we have to factor out 2, it's going to be 2, open the bracket, x squared minus 6x. So you can already see now the bracketed part, the coefficient of x squared is 1. And that means we can now complete the square of the bracketed part, but put in mind that there is a 2 outside. So 2, open a major bracket, x minus 6 over 2, which is a 3, squared minus negative 6 over 2, which is negative 3 squared. Close the main bracket, and the reason why I've opened the main bracket is because the 2, which is over here, is going to affect all of this term which are in the main bracket, simply because it affected, when we factored 2 outside, it affected all the terms in the bracket. So opening this bracket, you're going to have you're going to have 2 x minus 3 squared minus, of course, minus 3 squared is 9, and 9 times 2 is 18. Now, we have opened the major bracket, but if you look at the first part of the expression, 2 is still remaining outside because it still affects the bracketed part. But because it has already affected the negative 2 squared, that is why now the main bracket here, it does not exist. So this is simply the final submission as far as example 1 is concerned. Try to do a lot of practice as far as this one is concerned. I think we will be catching up with more detailed completing the square method. But if you have any problem, please don't hesitate to ask. All right?